The Atlanta Story is a podcast highlighting Atlanta's most interesting creators, entrepreneurs, and builders. I'm JC Cadet with Atlanta Ventures and co-producer alongside Jon Birdsong. In today's episode, Jon sits down with Zac Harrison, founder of Fresh Harvest. Over 10 years ago, a cross-country bike trip sparked the desire to deliver locally grown food to the doorsteps of consumers. Today, Fresh Harvest supplies Georgia-grown food and produce to over 3,300 households every week through their sourcing and operations. In today's interview, Zac shares stories from Fresh Harvest's beginnings, clever ways to raise food-conscious kids, how he builds culture with over 70 employees today, and much more. We hope you enjoy the show and subscribe to The Atlanta Story.
Zac Harrison, welcome to the Atlanta Story podcast. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's going to be fun.
Founder of Fresh Harvest. It started with a bike ride.
Yep.
Across the country.
Yeah.
Walk us through the evolution of where you started and where you ended.
Yeah, for sure. No, that, I haven't gone down memory lane in a minute about that. But so I was playing music full time, traveling around a little bit. It's like full-time job-ish as you can, be with that, and if you're not famous at all.
What instrument?
So I play guitar.
Nice.
Play with a band of a bunch of guys who were a lot better than me. So I was kind of tagging along and playing some guitar. And then that came to a close, and I just, needed to go discover myself, figure out what was next, think through, okay, am I going to, because I dropped out of college. I went to a semester of school, and then had the opportunity to do some other music stuff. And so dropped out to hang out. And then that came to a close and was like, okay, so am I going back to school? What am I doing? And I was evaluating a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And so then, yeah.
What were some of the options
that
you were evaluating?
I was considering going to Georgia Tech, my back to school. I was considering doing...
Some of the most successful people are Georgia Tech dropouts.
Yeah, for sure. So I decided to stick with that, really well-paved path and follow in their footsteps. So, yeah, I was considering school stuff. I was thinking through, I liked to write. I was like, oh, could I be a writer? I was it was all over the place, man.
Yeah.
And so really, I took a motorcycle trip with a buddy of mine who, before the day we left, had never ridden a motorcycle.
What?
I had ridden.
Oh, you had?
A little bit. Not a lot, by any means. I took a borrowed motorcycle on a motorcycle trip around the country.
What was what type of motorcycle?
Oh man, this is not at all like the hipster trip that you're picturing, or like the fancy BMW with the side. It's not that. It's an amazing motorcycle, and shout out to my now father-in-law who let me borrow it.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it was a Honda V-twin, man. It's like a Harley.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And so I looked pretty bad to the bone. But I literally just threw a book bag on the back of it.
Wow.
And then my buddy, literally he, some of his gear fell off on the highway heading out of Atlanta. So we could talk about that trip for a long time. That's another whole interview. But anyway, we landed, my cousin worked on a farm on the coast of California called Slide Ranch. And we literally just pulled down the gravel drive on our motorcycles and met him there. And from that moment on of those next, couple days, a lot of stuff in me was turning over, because it's the most picturesque place ever. You'll have to look it up, but it's north of San Francisco, right next to Muir Woods. Mm-hmm. And so we stayed there, and then that evening had a meal in their little common kitchen area with a bunch of the folks that worked on the farm, and we had gone out and harvested the veggies we were going to eat. We had literally milked the goats and picked up the, eggs from the chicken coop and all that stuff. And so
And this was 2012.
This is 2012.
Yep.
Yeah. So that meal kind of led me to thinking, okay, this is cool. I want to do something with this.
Yes.
And so really was considering like going and interning and training to learn how to grow food myself.
But then you just said, I'm going to go start something.
Yeah. So came back from that trip thinking like, man, how do I bring this idea, this feeling to my hometown here? And at the same time, simultaneously, my dad, who's like a serial entrepreneur, has done a bunch of different stuff over the years, was talking to another friend of his about grocery delivery.
Yeah.
And what that looked like. And
because this was still before Instacart, right?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Before Instacart, like the comparison that we got at the time was to Schwann's. You remember that? Like the 90s, like the internet just started and you can get your meat delivered. Yeah. Webvan and Schwann, like that's kind of what people compared us to. And like, I don't know what Schwann's is doing now. I haven't checked in, but big, didn't turn out great for them. And so, food delivery wasn't a normal thing at the time. So like we had to explain what we were a lot. But so they're talking about this and have this kind of grocery delivery idea going. And then I step in again, trying to figure out what to do next and said, well, hey, what if we connected, like I can help, is what I was thinking. And what if we connected that idea with sourcing from local growers? And so that's what we tried to figure out how to do.
And that's a complex problem, right? What were the first steps y'all took coming back from the farm and saying, all right, well, we believe there's a market here, maybe, maybe not, but did you go to the farmers first? Did you go pre-sell, around the neighborhood?
Yeah. So we did not know any farmers at the time. And so the first thing we did was like tell our friends and family, hey, we're going to be starting we came up with the business model, of course, which we could talk more about, but, and then we said, okay, we're going to launch this in September. And, we did. And at the products that were in our first baskets were not at all what we hoped to become. It was just fruits and vegetables, and it was like all organic stuff, but stuff that we could get our hands on. So like it took a while for us to build relationships with local growers, and we delivered 43 baskets our first week in almost the same delivery area, like the map that we have now, where we're delivering to a lot more people than that. Like it was spread out all over the place, man. One truck running around, all that.
And the baskets are the same baskets today, right? Like y'all kind of guessed that version of the product and how you packaged it up. And it sounds like years later, that's the right mix, right?
Right. Yeah. The only thing we changed was offering more versions of the baskets. Like when we first started, there was just a couple sizes that you could choose from. And what we learned was like people need more entry points. And so we have more basket types now, but it's the same thing, same process. So you sign up for a basket to be delivered to your house. And then we fill the basket with what's coming in most fresh from the farms each week. So it's different every week. So it's like a CSA. The goal was, how do we modernize the CSA? The box that you go pick up from the farm of whatever the farmer's grown that week.
Yes.
Well,
technology. What does CSA stand for?
Community Supported Agriculture.
Got it.
So like that's what we try to continue to really hang our hat on, is that's what we want to be. And we really still do that. We have some internal metrics that we're always
and the mechanism to support is getting that food to people who may or may not have the time, access,
right,
resources.
Yeah, so it's the same thing you would get at the farmers market down the road, Freedom Farmers Market. Like we work with all those same farmers, and so but it's obviously it's delivered to your house.
Yep.
And you can, where it's different from a CSA is you can customize your order.
Right.
Like we set it up and be like, here's the 10, 11, however many items that you're getting next week, and you can not touch it, and you'll just get whatever we think is a good basket, or you can go in there and swap things around for the same price. So that's all included.
And so you've been doing this for a decade, and you've seen, flash in the pan things come and go. I'm not going to name any names, but this feels very stable. This feels very real. How do you look at growing it, the business, knowing that you're a decade in and you're an experienced, college dropout?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's the truth. How we look at growing it, I guess, like what we found out early on is the fresh harvest basket was something that people would tell their neighbors about. Now, we made mistakes and we had to learn and all of that for sure. Another thing we could talk about for a long time, but people would tell their friends. And so almost all at the beginning of our marketing budget was just trying to make our basket great and trying to give people some incentive to tell their neighbor, And so early on, I was talking to somebody who's a pro in marketing and had worked at Tommy Hilfiger and these other places. And he was like, all y'all need to do is guerrilla marketing, and now there's obviously that's more of a hip phrase or whatever. But at the time I was like, what does that mean? It just means focusing on really small areas and obviously having a great product and then making it easy for people to tell their connections. And so we've never had a big billboard on the side of the interstate or anything like that. And so the growth of the future is just more of that. Like we don't aim to take this idea anywhere else. And I think that was an important thing we decided early on, because you'll see a lot of companies like ours, and we could go into the specifics of some of these, like looking back, but they build their really great model and cohort of growers and consumers, and then they try to go, hey, let's go nationwide, or let's franchise it out or whatever. And then you're taking the local out of it, right? If I'm going to ship it to Kansas, it's no longer unique because it's grown here for here, in at least in our kind of ethos. And so holding on to that is really important. And if somebody wants to go start a fresh harvest in Kansas or in, Nashville or whatever.
It's like, here's the playbook.
Cool. Yeah, here's a playbook. Like we can, would love to talk about it, but we aren't trying to take this anywhere else. And so I think the commitment to here and the people that we know and the connection, there's so much work to be done, man. Like the literal and figurative, like just digging our roots deeper here is what we're trying to do for the next 10 years.
So the excitement around growth is deeper roots here, more users. Can you share some of the who's the ideal customer, right? Obviously they're in a certain zip code, right? Of delivery.
Sure.
Is it ITP, OTP, all over the place? Like help us kind of hone that in, especially for the listeners.
Yeah. So if you can picture the map of Atlanta and surrounding counties, we deliver everywhere inside the perimeter, and then like fanning out across the northern counties, we deliver out to Athens. I wish I could like hold that up, but so there we hope to expand and go to other parts of Atlanta and surrounding like counties and cities. But what we aren't trying to do is be like, hey, let's go down to Savannah too, or whatever. So the ideal customer is anybody that eats vegetables in that area, and anybody that wants to be a conscious consumer and know where their food's coming from, and build in some automation to their health. Like that's something we've talked about from the very beginning, is like if a basket of veggies is going to show up at your door next week, you're going to consume it. You're not going to want to like double up on stuff. I mean, you can skip your basket and all that stuff within our system.
Right.
But yeah, so anybody who wants to eat healthy in that area, and I think what a lot of people think is that we are some luxury service, and we're just not. Like if you did a price comp from us and then the other stuff at like the organic stuff at Whole Foods or wherever else you may grow or go, you're going to find a lot of similarities. And ours again, we're buying it from small, sustainable, organic, local farms here in Georgia.
The degree of individual, I've done a couple services, right? And it's like a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing that it's, okay, a couple vegetables, and on your website, I saw there's meat. Can you buy those just like directly, or is that also in the basket? Is everything through the basket?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you have to have a basket in order to get a delivery.
Okay.
Because of our commitment to local farms, our main core purpose is to buy as much local produce as possible from all the farmers we know.
Okay.
And so if you want to subscribe to the service, you pick a basket size. It can be all fruit, all vegetable, or a mix of both. It can be all 100% Georgia grown. Like our most popular baskets, like as far as in growth, are becoming our Georgia grown only baskets. Because we sell things like, bananas and, when we get pomegranates this time of year or whatever, those aren't grown in Georgia, obviously.
Right.
And so we do have those other things, and people can get those from us. But then you can add on all your other groceries as well. So we've got meat and eggs and milk and prepared meals and cocktail syrups and all this kind of stuff as well. Like our grocery offerings, after maybe a 2 years in, we started doing granola and honey and stuff like that, the easy stuff. And then we really wanted to expand that. We don't want to be like one-stop shop, get your Crest toothpaste here kind of place. But we do want to be your full-on local grocery provider.
What, based off of the engagement on Instagram and the reputation y'all have built, what is, can you share some of the just high level metrics on how many deliveries are y'all providing in a week or?
Yeah, sure. So we deliver on average around 3,300 stops a week right now. So we do the same thing over and over again every single week.
3,300.
Mm-hmm. And so 80% of what comes in, like our cost of goods, what we buy and put in our baskets, 80% of that is from an average of 70 miles away, which is like a drive to Dahlonega or whatever. So that's kind of gives you a lens into what's different about us and getting your turnips and your kale and, your persimmons and things like that through us versus going to the grocery store, as well as your, cut of steak that you want to put on the grill this weekend. So yeah, that's how many deliveries we're doing each week.
And if I were to compare it from, a Publix run versus, Fresh Harvest, knowing Publix is, not organic and it's all over, how does that, from a price conscious consumer, what do those numbers look like? Yeah.
No, I think that's a great question. So if you were to take our basket, just the produce in the basket, we would probably be a little more expensive than getting your organic stuff at Publix. But that's also, it's getting delivered to you as well. So that's, and then if you were to, all the other meats and eggs and stuff like that, now they are bought from the same people that are at the farmer's market. So these are not only ethically grown, and small scale items, but it's transparent. You always know where it's coming from, which is a really key thing for us. But yeah, including delivery and everything, especially if you value your time at a couple bucks an hour, it's going to be similar in price.
So during COVID, went down a lot of rabbit holes. One of them being the Michael Pollock documentary. And it was all about food, and it was all about eating healthy. And he distilled the key to eating healthy in 7 words, which is eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
Yep.
And that was like the quintessential takeaway from the documentary.
Yeah.
Where did you fall in love with healthy food?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I think that's a great quote. We need to put that up on our website. He definitely has some cred there, obviously. And I remember he wrote a book, I don't know how long ago, but it seems like a long time ago, called Food Rules, which is, I would recommend to anybody. It's super easily digestible. It's like 100 rules or however many. And that was one of the rules. And so, so we, like, where did that come for us? For me.
Yeah, for you.
Yeah. So, like, I didn't grow up, growing a bunch of food myself in my parents' backyard or anything, but my grandparents, they lived on Lake Oconee, and they had a huge, very, very southern mix of vegetables, but a huge garden. And so I learned about composting, and I didn't really know that it was composting, but it's like, oh yeah, we take our veggie scraps, we walk outside and we mix it in the dirt. And if we caught a fish that day and we, cleaned it up, we put the leftovers in there as well, and we mix it up, and that seemed fun. And so, like, that was really visceral for me growing up, and it really is due to them, my grandparents. And so that was my earliest experience, whether it was shucking corn or they loved lima beans, which I love lima beans now, but at the time I was like, this is a lot of work. And so, and I remember, like, they even did raspberries, which is, they were delicious. But that was kind of my lens of vegetables and of knowing where your food comes from. And I never really thought about it much. And then, again, that meal on that trip is where it sort of said, like, oh, this is more to me. I want to learn more about this.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. Check out our website to access many resources, including free tools and guides to start a business, a calendar of our upcoming events hosted at Atlanta Tech Village, and a lot more content around building companies. If you could tell the average consumer that goes to Publix, Kroger, something that you see that someone like me doesn't, in terms of food, and from all of your relationships with farmers who, why is local and why should that be prioritized versus, a stop at Publix?
Yeah. So first, little clarifying statement, no judgment to anybody who does that, for sure. 'Cause I understand if that's the way you're raised, like all that stuff. I get it. And, so I'm not above a Publix stop and all that kind of stuff. But when I walk around, what I see is like so much, waste in two ways. The first one being just waste of, like, your own money versus, like, where it's actually going. Like, the value of food, I think, is really something we could dig into more. But the stat that I heard years ago, and I need to go back and check it and see what the updated 2022 version is, but it's like 7% or 7 cents on every dollar of what you spend on your produce specifically, but food goes to the person who grew it, Whereas within the fresh harvest system, over 50 cents, between 50 and 50, depending on, like, time of year and which items you're buying, which I won't get into all that, but, like, the 50 cents out of every dollar is going to the person who actually grew it. And with the remaining margins, it's like, what is the grocery store doing with the other 93 cents, and what is Fresh Harvest doing with the other 50 cents? Well, the other 50 cents are paying for insurance and fuel and people to pack it and all that kind of stuff. So that's just a huge difference. And it that's not to say whoever owns the store, the grocery store, is, putting more in their pocket necessarily, but there's just a lot more waste in the fact that they have to set it up and make it pretty and put it on certain aisles and have so many SKUs and put the things at the end of the aisle to get you in the door. It's like, it's all sales, and our system doesn't have any of that. Our only sales front is our website,
right.
which a website is pretty cheap to maintain compared to a brick and mortar big old store with, air conditioning units everywhere.
So that's one.
And then, the second one is just the food waste. So like the Fresh Harvest system literally has zero food waste in it, because when a customer orders a basket, we give you a customization window is what we call it, where you can go in and change things up.
Right.
And we then are able to order exactly what our customer base wants for that next week. So before it gets into our hands and our coolers, we know it's already sold. And so there's no fluff, no extra inventory, And so, but the just classic grocery store system isn't set up to be that way, understandably. They don't know how many people are going to come in the door every day and all that in the same way that we do. And they have to have all the extra stuff.
Right.
And so there's just a lot more food waste in that. It's just such a different way of consuming your food when you can say, hey, we need that carrot. And one thing we do is we talk about crop planning a lot. We talk with our growers about how many carrots we think our customers are going to want next year. And we say, put our name on that one, that seed, that row. And we commit to buying those things based on our customer base. Yeah. Yeah.
So with 3,300 a week, that's getting up there in terms of that's some real weekly. That's some real volume.
Yeah.
Word has to be getting out just nationally on hey, Fresh Harvest in Georgia is making a massive impact on the local food community. So let's say, in Kansas City or, pick a place, Nashville, how is that problem of waste being solved, or is it just not?
Yeah. Well, I think there are other companies doing slightly similar versions of what we do. I know of some for sure. I don't know that every city has that great solution yet. But yeah, there are other companies trying to tackle what we're doing. And so I would just push people to check that out and think about, okay, the value of your grocery budget can be really increased. And that doesn't mean spend more money. That just, if you're going to spend $50 when you go in the grocery store, think about, where is this $50 going? And can I just kind of reconsider where I'm getting, my eggs and my, kale and the things that I'm going to be eating that week. So yeah, I would say looking for other.
The meat on y'all's website looked really good too.
Yeah. We've got
really fresh.
A lot of great providers now that are doing that.
And so let's talk about the team in terms of how do you build the culture. Mm-hmm. We were talking in line downstairs with coffee. You had a pretty cool story about one of the drivers on Instagram. But
yeah.
How many employees are y'all at, and how do you retain, build culture and more?
Yeah. Man, we've learned a lot over the years. So there's 72 of us now. And that's everybody from, the folks who are answering the emails and setting up the products for the next week and bringing on new vendors and packing your baskets and delivering your stuff. We don't outsource our deliveries, which is something I would say man, that's really valuable. Because your stuff is taken care of and it's on a refrigerated truck and it's not sitting in the back of somebody's sedan for 4 hours while they go do something else. So those kind of, so yeah, we've got people who specialize in all that. And so how do you build and maintain culture? Man, it's hard, I would say. I think the key is just really, in some ways, at the beginning, getting lucky and bringing on great people that you can't really understand why they just chose to work with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of a bunch of examples like that, and some of those folks still with us who have now grown in the ranks as the company has grown and who are running the show. And so we got really lucky, I would say. Like my dad told me, I don't know where he got this. It was probably some old school business book or something, but you're always hiring the right person, And it's like, man, that is true. If somebody great comes along, like figure out how to give them something to do that's important. And so we have done that. But I also think we're not a very corporate place to work. Like 72 people feels like a lot to us. I mean, if you think about, for the longest time, for years, there was anywhere from 3 to 20 people. And so when we grew a lot, and that was, a lot of that was supercharged during the pandemic. One thing we had to learn how to do is like disseminate culture. And now that we can't all be in the same room doing everything together all the time, like if you just care a lot, and we have people on our team that just care a lot, like you can get so much great stuff done, man. Like just keep caring the next day. And so we had really built our culture on that. And so, but one thing we had to figure out is how do we really clarify what are our values as a company, like this official type stuff, without being
too corporate-y.
Oh man, yeah, I resist that stuff a lot. Like I don't like, put your mission statement on the wall kind of stuff. It feels really just doesn't feel authentic a lot of times to me. So, but we had to start figuring out how to encapsulate what it was we were all about for the rest of our team, especially new folks coming on. And so
how'd y'all do that?
I mean, I wouldn't say we nailed it and did it great by any means, but I think we started putting some processes in place. We've always been really transparent about the way the business is run. So we have a weekly meeting with all the leaders of each team, and we talk about every number. Open book management is really key to what we're all about. And so I just believe that, like, I'm not a genius. The other person on the side of the table is probably smarter than me, but not a genius either. But if we can put our brains together, like that's a real mastermind effect. Like we can have the best idea raised to the top. And so if as many people as possible have all the information, we can make better decisions. So we've always been all about that. And I think because we had been doing that for so long, we were able to say, just get this information to more people. And the processes of doing so may be a little muddy, but like we've got the content. So we just had to figure out how to get the right people in the room at the right time, even if the room couldn't hold all 72 of us. We had to figure out how to get that to folks.
So you mentioned COVID was a catalyst for a few customers. Where do you see the future of grocery in our generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think those will be dinosaurs as time goes on?
I mean, I think the future is definitely, like when you think about the future of food and sustainability and stuff like that, I think it's going to become more and more evident that the local food system is the most resilient one, kind of turning the page back to the way it used to be before, we were eating things with all kinds of ingredients in them, and a lot of those ingredients are highly subsidized by the government, all that kind of stuff. But what will the future of buying your food look like? I hope it's not all online and all delivery, because, man, I love going to a farmer's market, and shaking a physical hand is really important. But I think that'll become more and more prevalent. I mean, seriously, 10 years ago to now, like when we talk about what we do, which has not changed, it's totally accepted, or it's received as very clear from the moment you and I talk when we first meet each other. If I describe it, you aren't like, wait, what?
Whereas 10 years ago, it was like, you're trying to do web van?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. It's like, wait, I don't want you to pick out my tomato. I want to choose which one I want. Like that isn't obviously there anymore.
it probably helps that the market has been educated by, like some of the ones that tried to, put it all over the country.
Yeah. If you look at the huge companies, the Amazons and Walmarts and all that kind of stuff, I mean, they're making it so that our job is easier in one sense because it's more accepted and it's habitual for folks. But then we just have to clarify why we are so different. And the main thing that's different is the actual food you're eating and where it's coming from.
Somewhat important.
Yeah. The whole reason you're doing it in the first place, hopefully.
So a couple other things. You said your dad's a serial entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a serial entrepreneur, or are you going to get it to a point where this company and this kernel of truth that you discovered 10 years ago gets to a place where you look around and you're like, wow, this is really big. It can run without me. And now I'm going to go do something else? Or what's the future of Zac Harrison look like?
I mean, that's a great question. I have thought about it before, and it's like, man, no. Like the answer is no. I wouldn't want to start anything from the ground up again. Like I feel like life is so much easier now. Yeah. Like in the sense that like there's all kinds of different complexities and there is more risk here than there was before, all that stuff. So it's not like there's not a lot of hard work to do every day, but comparing now to when we started and all the unknowns, like I would rather keep working on the same thing and make it better and better and have like offshoots of, okay, what can that platform empower in other systems and stuff, like things that we would have never thought we could do 10 years ago are now like, yeah, I think we can pull that off in the next year and stuff like that. So like we've officially made our Share the Harvest program, which is kind of our giving arm. We've made that a nonprofit, and we're breaking it off and we're putting that together and figuring out a lot more that we can do that. Things like that are
Can you double click on that? What is Share the Harvest?
Yeah. So Share the Harvest is the idea that came from this quote I read years ago, which is our excess is someone else's necessity. And so what was like the lens at the time was we have a lot of fruits and vegetables coming in to our hands, passing through our hands every week as fresh harvest, and what we did every day. And so, man, how do we use our excess, our extra money, our extra time, our extra connections to meet the needs of the folks around us? And where we are in Clarkston, there's a large refugee just population of our neighbors. And so it's taken many forms over the years, but Share the Harvest is a weekly subsidized farmer's market of the same stuff that comes in our baskets. It's now a bus that we're hoping to outfit soon, but we take it, we park it at the apartment complex, pop up some tables and sell our stuff to folks all around there. And so that's what it looks like right now. It also has some other emphasis too on horticultural therapy. We have folks from the high school that come out and do that and do some different internship and training stuff with Cody, our garden manager. And so just trying to use that space for bringing life to folks. And a lot of times like getting outside and getting your hands dirty and working alongside friends is really therapeutic for folks that have been through a lot. Yeah.
You mentioned you've got 3 boys. Mm-hmm. I've got 2 little ones. How do you instill a food conscious mentality with them? Yeah.
The first thing I think of is like I'm not a great chef by any means, and I don't really follow recipes really. Like I think that's great and probably would taste better, but my style is more like chop it up and see what happens. And so we cook over the fire a lot together. We have a little fire pit in our backyard, and they love doing that. And so that's just really messy and fun, you know? Yeah. And so bringing them into that process and, giving them a cutting board and a knife
vegetables to, meat?
Oh yeah.
Just
yeah.
everything?
So we're, it's very campfire feeling. It's not fancy, but we'll throw some stuff in the skillet and it just makes it more approachable for them. It's literally lower on the ground. They can see it as opposed to like looking up, at the kitchen counter and on the stove or in the oven that, oh no, it's too hot, don't or whatever. So yeah, we try to do that a lot, which is really fun.
That's cool.
And then, we just try to we obviously get a fresh harvest basket. And so we try to have different stuff on our table a lot. And by no means do they eat all their vegetables. They're kids.
Yeah.
But they do pretty well with it. And so I think taking them to see farms and gardens and stuff is anybody can do that. Like, obviously that's something that's easy for me to do. Obviously I take them along with me for work. We just last night, cause it's getting cold, had to go close up the hoop houses at the garden, and they come with me and help with that. So if you see it, you like it more. Like they'll pick some stuff out of the garden, not know what it is, and it's like a mustard green, and they'll try it and it's good.
Yeah.
So I think just exposure,
So the last question that we always ask is why Atlanta, and what has Atlanta done for you? But I want to add one more caveat, because that experience you had in California and that kind of transformational moment, you could have built Fresh Harvest in just about any city. Mm-hmm. What brought you back to Georgia, mm-hmm. and why Atlanta, and what has Atlanta done for you?
Yeah. I mean, it was coming back home. This is where I'm from. This is one thing I think we put it on our website at one point. It may not still be on there, but born and raised in beautiful Atlanta. And that's just true. Like we are from here, and we are raising our families here, and we're raising our business here. And so it's just a really specific commitment to place. And I think that's more obvious when you're working with food, that like a sense of the dirt in the ground being a part of it is just a real reason for the connection. It's like, it makes sense that you would love here more, I think, if you're out and in it. Not that you couldn't do this somewhere else, but when you can do this with your friends and your built-in connections, and you've got family around to support you and experience it and stuff like that. Like, seriously, our first week of deliveries, 2 of the 43 were my mom and my now mother-in-law. So, hey, you need that, man.
Yeah.
You need that support. And so that's why here for us, and what Atlanta has done for us, is just buy in. And I mean that really literally. Like we have tried to use our mistakes as marketing opportunities. I believe that. Like, if you screw something up, admit it and make it right times 2 or 3 or 4 or 10. We've always tried to do that, but the people around us have supported Fresh Harvest and have bought in. And like one stat, like we were talking about, this is our kind of 10-year anniversary year. We just had a gathering at a brewery where it was our team, a lot of our customers, with the growers we work with, and some of our other artisan vendors, all together having food and beers and stuff. And one of the things that we talked about was, in the past 10 years, we have invested through the purchases of our customers over $15 million, $15,464,000 in local food. And that doesn't happen if people don't keep getting a basket, and if farmers don't keep growing stuff for those. Like, they could sell their food other places. And they've decided to, it's not like our farmers only sell to us. They go to the farmers market too and sell to restaurants too. But a lot of them take a large portion of their land and designate it to Fresh Harvest baskets. And so that is like the most supportive thing that people can do for us. We are then the handshake in the middle,
Yeah. Zac, thank you so much for being part of the Atlanta story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. It was co-produced by JC Cadet and Jon Birdsong. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business in Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com and the companies we work with who've done it before. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it at your next coffee meeting or dinner greeting, rate it, and write a benevolent, eloquent review.